Hello and welcome to today's episode number 5 of the Human Conditioned podcast. I'm your host, American Council on Exercise Certified Personal Trainer, Kiri Jones. On today's episode, I'm going to be covering the most recent blog post about understanding fat and fat loss, and I will be addressing one of my first comments on the podcast. It came from my cousin, however, it is still a very genuine question that I think people would benefit from hearing my answer to. So first, understanding fat and fat loss. When people are on their health and fitness journeys, specifically when they're first starting out, their goal, one of their main goals, is to lose fat. And there are a lot of misconceptions surrounding that being a goal because there is not enough education being put in front of people to really understand what it is that they're trying to do. And that's by no fault of their own. It's the popular stuff that gets put in front of people. Like you constantly scroll past the ads that are like, this is how you lose fat. And of course, that's going to be the thing you're going to click on. That's going to be what you're going to look at because why wouldn't you? And if you don't know what you don't know, then you don't know it. It's really a really confusing way, basically, of saying if you didn't know the information was out there, how would you know to look for it? Now, there are different types of fat, and I'm not going to go into the very scientific explanations of fat, like white fat, brown fat, fat cells, etc., etc. What I will say is there's deep fat, visceral adipose tissue, which is what's around your organs, and then there's subcutaneous fat, which is the stuff you can see on the outside that you can pinch. There is a certain amount of fat that is essential for the body to carry, which seems counterintuitive to trying to lose fat. So the minimum amount of essential fat that a person should have based on gender is men should not go below 6% body fat and women should not go below 12%, but some circles say shouldn't go below 10%. Either way, just know that there is a minimum level that you shouldn't go below because fat is essential for things like hormone regulation and production. It's essential for metabolizing fat-soluble vitamins, and it is a form of energy storage for the body. And I don't remember if I had mentioned this in a previous podcast, but a gram of fat is 9 calories. So it's energy dense. Because obviously you need energy to survive. You're not just going to need energy when you're exercising, or you're not just going to have energy while you're eating, if that makes sense. So you need your body to store some amount of energy long term. Because in your muscles you have ATP, glycogen, things that are rapidly used while exercising, but fat is for survival. There is a lot of negative things that can occur if you dip below this. And some people do, purposefully, because they are physique competitors. That extreme of a dip will increase their muscle definition. But they also do things like dehydrate themselves purposefully in order to look more ripped. And I'm sure I will end up discussing that at some point. But they only do this temporarily because they also know that dipping below that minimum level is bad for them, especially if you do it in the long term. It can create serious, irreparable damage to the body. But dipping below your minimum essential fat level is going to do things like, for men, it's going to mess with their testosterone. Even in women, it can cease menstrual cycles and also have a major impact on fertility. Now, on the flip side, there is excessive fat. And what that does is put you at an increased risk for cardiovascular disease, metabolic conditions like obesity and type 2 diabetes. It can increase your body's pain, inflammation in the body, joint pain, because it is carrying around excess weight. And then, as I discussed before, there's, internal visceral adipose tissue, if you have too much of that building up around your organs, that's also detrimental. Like, think of things like fatty liver disease. So now let's talk about measuring body fat. There are methods of measuring body fat that are readily available to people, like technology or going to the doctor or getting measurements, but a lot of the most accessible forms of measuring body fat are not completely accurate, and then the ones that are more accurate are not necessarily accessible because they're more expensive, like DEXA scans or bod pods. The most common ways that people are going to measure their body fat are things that they can buy, like wearable technology or measuring using a tape, a flexible tape. And what I want people to really think about is the accuracy thing. A lot of people focus on the number. I've had scales tell me that I am a certain body fat percentage that was in excess of what I knew that I was. So pay attention, like I said in the last podcast, to the overall trend. Are you trending upward? Are you trending downward? And what direction are you trying to go? Are you trying to gain fat? Are you trying to lose fat? Which direction are you headed? The number is not the important thing. And I'm saying that in terms of, like, from a psychological standpoint. I'm obviously aware of the fact that the number is important in terms of, like, your health from a physician's standpoint. But for you on a day-to-day basis, it's just a piece of the puzzle. It's not the whole puzzle. If you see a number on that scale that you do not like, that does not mean that you have failed in your health and fitness journey. So, let's get that out of our heads. And I'm going to use an example because I feel like a lot of these things that happen in doctors' offices or at home are kind of antiquated. So in the Army, for example, now we are on a single point tape test. If you're overweight, which even the weight standards are, we'll discuss that another time. If you're overweight in the Army, you have to be under your max allowable body fat percentage in order to be considered in shape enough not to get negative repercussions. And it's a single site tape test. So they measure around your midsection, and that is how the Army determines what your body fat percentage is. And I think that it is really unforgiving because you have people who have bigger midsections because they are bigger people. And I don't mean overweight. I mean, like, these are giant monsters of people that you wouldn't want to run into in a dark alley if you didn't know that they were soft as teddy bears. It becomes unfair when your whole career hinges on it, but that's me and that's anybody else in the military. You know, this is a battle that we face. But for a normal civilian person, follow the trend, don't follow the number. A pound of fat is generally recognized as being 3,500 calories. So if you want to lose fat, you have to eat in a caloric deficit on a weekly basis. Your week has to be lowered by 3,500 calories. And that doesn't mean like you can do, 500 calories this day and 100 calories this day, because yo-yoing your body like that is not going to help it regulate enough to understand what it is that you're trying to do. And crash dieting is terrible for you. I hate crash dieting because that will not target your fat loss. What crash dieting does is make you lose pounds, not pounds of fat. This can include water weight, it can include fat, but it can also include lean muscle mass. So, if you're trying to lose weight, your whole week's caloric intake needs to be lowered by 3,500 calories. If you're trying to gain weight, you should increase your calories across the week by 3,500. There are some myths about weight loss, about fat loss specifically. Like, people believe that if they go running more often, they will lose fat. And what ends up happening is you run and your body goes into this vigorous exercise mode where you burn glycogen and not fat. You have to lower the intensity slightly of your run. So maybe you're walking uphill or doing an incline walk on the treadmill, or you're jogging, or maybe you're ruck marching, because rucking is really good for you. As long as you're staying below that vigorous level of your heart rate, then you're more likely to target fat, because otherwise you're just exercising your cardiovascular system, which is also important. But that is not the goal if your goal is fat loss. There's another way that you can measure if you're not one of those people that wears wearable technology. It's called rate of perceived exertion. And that, the scale only works if you are honest with yourself. But it's a 1 to 10 scale where you have these zones where you have light work, you have moderate work, you have hard work, and then you have extreme, vigorous work. And you want to keep it somewhere in the middle. You don't want your heart rate too high, but you also don't want it too low. You want to feel that you're working, but you don't want to feel like you're working so hard. But all of that is to say, I'm going to backtrack to where I was. Running is not specifically going to target your body's fat stores. Another thing that tends to happen is people will avoid weights because their goal, they believe that their goal of fat loss has nothing to do with weights. But weights are extremely important because what you're doing is you're getting that moderate intensity heart rate, you're building lean muscle mass, and in turn, your body will use its fat energy stores more efficiently. But on the flip side of that, there are some people who lift weights assuming that it is going to help them lose fat. And this is kind of goes hand in hand to my next myth that I want to cover, and that's targeted fat loss. So I've seen ads where it's like, lose belly fat if you do this, or let's target the underarm area, whatever. You cannot spot reduce fat. Your body does not let you just choose where it is that you want to lose the fat. So when I combine that with people who lift weights thinking they're going to lose fat, if your fat is not being lost at the rate that you're building muscle, all you're doing is building that muscle underneath the fat, which can actually exacerbate if you're one of those people that looks at yourself, it can exacerbate some psychological issues there. But just understand that, if you're getting bigger, but you're not eating worse and you're trending in the right direction in terms of your overall health and fitness journey, it might just be because your body is lagging behind that fat loss. You're building muscle, but you're just a little bit lagging there, and that's fine because everything, all the positive choices that you're making are going to add up eventually. Your body needs time to regulate. I mean, think about it. If you were working in an office and then somebody ran into your office and told you that you had XYZ amount of tasks that you had to get done in one day, and now all of a sudden you're overwhelmed and you have no idea what's going on and you need 15 to 20 minutes to really think out a plan before you can efficiently do that plan. That's your body. Not 10 to 15 minutes, but your body needs time to understand the plan so that it can regulate itself again. Patience is key. It is so important. But I think as a society, we tend to lose patience more quickly because we are a society now of instant gratification. But the best way to lose fat is to combine positive choices in nutrition, is to combine different types of exercise. So of course, still exercise, cardio, but also do these lower intensity, or not lower, but moderate intensity exercises that will help your body use fat as its primary energy source instead of glycogen, carbohydrates. So combine all of these things together. If you are one of those people that wants to measure it, then understand that not everything is that accurate, but you're following a trend. Uptrend, downtrend, whatever. And really just pay attention to how you feel physically. As you start to lose fat or gain fat if you're below where you're supposed to be, your body will start to feel like it functions better. And it takes a certain level of self-awareness to really separate how you think that you look from how you actually feel. So really keep on top of and be honest with yourself about how you actually feel physically. Because your body will play tricks on you. Your mind is a fickle thing. You can have a day where you think that you look worse than you did the day prior. And there is absolutely no way that you gained or lost, depending on your direction, so much that in 24 hours you were suddenly worse than you were the day before. But your brain's going to blow it way out of proportion. So don't let that happen. Take control. Let's move on to this comment. So I'm going to read the comment to you, and then we'll discuss. So the comment says, I'd love to hear your take on the impact influencer culture and trends have on health and fitness journeys, and what your advice would be for people who are turning to celebrities/personalities for inspiration or advice. I am all for finding your inspiration. If there is something or someone that you can look at that makes you want to get up and do the thing, that's awesome. But please be careful, because if you're looking at celebrities for inspiration, understand that celebrities are under a lot of pressure to look a certain way. If you watch, I can't remember what it's called. New York Times has a short documentary series, and one of them covered Ozempic. And they actually covered Oprah specifically because Oprah was such a big personality and she was put under so much pressure to lose weight. And it's just, that's one example of really what happens. Like, we've seen celebrities spiral out of control. I mean, they're just people. Unfortunately, those people are in a career where their image matters more than it should. So if you're looking to a celebrity, understand that they also have access to things that you probably don't have access to. They have access to private personal trainers. They have access to chefs who give them personalized nutrition plans. They have access to things like performance enhancing drugs or experimental weight loss medications. They go to extreme lengths in order to maintain their physical appearance so that they can keep making money, because that's their image is what's being sold. That being said, as I said before, if their body type is your inspiration, learn how that works for you in a healthy way. Do not obsess over it. They're real people. For influencers who are giving people advice and information, or really just, and this kills me, some of them, they'll post what they do in a day. Like, I'm eating this, and this is my schedule, and this is what I drink, and order this from Starbucks because it's only this many calories, etc., etc. And they're saying that based like, oh, this is what I do in a day. But what they're not understanding is when other people look at that, they assume that if they follow the exact same thing that they do, they'll have the same results. And that's not how it works. So I think influencers need to be more careful about what they're pitching to people. And I'm not saying that influencers they're not giving advice or showing their lives or doing these things with ill intentions. They're doing what they know gets views, and as an influencer, it is their job to get views. Again, understand, if it is their job to get views, they're going to do what's popular. What is popular might not work for you, and what is popular might also not be healthy or sustainable. Some influencers can claim that they are health and fitness coaches because in most places in the United States, you don't have to be certified to say that. You can just jump on there and tell people that you're a personal trainer, and that's it. Like, it doesn't mean that you've gotten the education. It doesn't mean that you've spent the time to research. You don't have a certification. You don't have continuing education credits in order to keep up on health and fitness information. You can just say it. And people will follow you, because if you're selling your image, people are going to think that what you're doing is going to work for them. And I think I mentioned this in the previous podcast, or maybe it was 2 podcasts ago. This is how they make money, by selling things to you. And it's not, again, I'm not assuming that this is with ill intention, but it is not with the intention of helping the overall population become healthier. It's I know how to do this thing. This thing helps me look like this, and I'm going to sell you the plan. So it's a trap. It's a really steep slope to fall down, because influencers are everywhere, and a small portion of them are actually appropriately educated and very well intentioned to ensure that you're making informed decisions about your health and fitness journey. But the majority, the popular ones, don't necessarily know what they're talking about. So I think it's very important to be very cautious about who you use for advice and fitness information. I'm going to use this as an example. My wife had found this. It was like a trending protein cereal dessert thing. I don't know what was in it. I mean, I saw the video of them putting the things. That was like a $30 bowl of cereal, which is not the most convenient dessert to make. But then there's also, this has 50 grams of protein. This has 40 grams of protein. Your body can only hold your body can only process so much protein at one time. So you throwing a $3 protein cookie and 2 scoops of a $50 protein into a bowl of cereal, it might taste good, but God, that's expensive. I would use, if I were to look for influencers, I would use things like maybe somebody had a really good recipe for dinner and you want to meal prep that dinner, and it turns out the dinner's great, you love it, you know the macros, if that's your thing, you know the calories if that's your thing. Great, now you found a new recipe because somebody put it on the internet. Or somebody has a 10-minute quick exercise that you found convenient and made you feel like you got a great workout in 10 minutes because you're a busy person. Find what works for you, but understand that not everything will, not everything is supposed to, and not everything that you see is correct. So that was a very long-winded way of saying, if you want to use them for inspiration, use them. And if it helps you, and if it's a net positive, great. But be very cautious. I really hope that answered your question. And if it didn't, feel free to tell me. So here is episode number 5. We've talked about fat and fat loss, and we've talked about using influencers and celebrities as inspiration. So if you've made it to the end, like, comment, share, email, go to the website, read the blogs, listen to the podcast, disseminate this information wherever you feel in the universe it needs to go, because I guarantee you somebody in your life could use it. Maybe you can't, but somebody can. That's all for today. So until next time.